The first thing we have to do is we have to reject a deficit model. A deficit model says that our community is broken and our library is here to fix it. It's the whole idea of the community can't afford all the books that we get, so because they're poor, we'll bundle our money together and we'll buy them at the library. It's one of the original reasons for the public library, right? Books were expensive. Now we can put them all together. It's the idea that somehow people are lacking, that people don't have good enough reading skills, so we offer reading programs, that people don't have good after-school programs, so we'll provide them. That in essence, the library is a Band-Aid, that the library is a crutch. And I'll tell you what, after a while, any individual and any community gets tired of being told that it's broken. That if you constantly, your message is constantly support the library, build the library, dream about the library because you're broken, eventually the community will say, I don't want to hear that anymore. I'm at Syracuse University, this way, right? We're on a hill. We're literally on a hill. And this hill overlooks some of the poorest urban neighborhoods in the country, actually. And so what happens? Well, what happens is certain schools of the university say, we're going to fix it. And so we used to send students down. We used to send psychology students and sociology students, and we used to send all these folks down there, and they would say, hey, we're here to fix you. We're here to set up this program for you. We're here to set up for this. And the community quite literally told the university that we were no longer welcome because they were tired of being told they were broken. We had a new chancellor come in and tried a different way. What she did is she brought community members up and said, what do you want? What do you want to be? Where do you want to go? Where can we be? And they started programs where the community would start the programs and we would send students to help out. One example, the community came up and said, we're losing our memory. We're losing our history. We have very distinct cultures within our communities, and yet what's happening is as people move away, as people die, as people pass on, as the younger generation ignores it, we're losing our culture. And so we put together library and information science students who would go and work with elders to capture pictures. They'd bring shoeboxes full of images, and we could scan them and not only produce albums for them and durable, but provide online albums. We organized bus tours where they would go around and we would get oral histories of, oh, this community used to be that, and this highway wasn't here, so it used to do this. And so they said, what we need is help in creating the memory, and the library and the library science students and the university came in and helped them achieve their goal, not something we wanted to fix them with. So what we must do is reject the deficit model of libraries. And the other thing we've got to reject right along with it, next slide please, is the consumer model. There's a way that, what do we call people who use a library? Well, we used to call them patrons. Patrons has become a little old-fashioned. Actually, as it goes, patrons, I kind of like it in that it at least means that we're there supporting the work we're doing. But now we've begun with consumer or customer. And I don't like this at all. I don't like the idea that we have customers or users. I really don't like the word users because it means someone comes in and uses you and then walks away. Someone comes in and consumes from you and then walks away. It sees the people of the library community as consumers and people who take. And yet what we know is that when you look in that community, certainly there are people who want to get the book and walk away. But there are an increasingly large number of people who are looking for a place to have a voice, to have a say, to have an expression. Libraries have begun community gardening programs where library members, I prefer members, by the way, library members would come into the library and say, we want to know about gardening. And instead of the old sort of collection view of libraries, they go, well, here's a book on gardening. They say, yeah, but we live in an apartment. We can't garden. And so what these libraries would begin to do is they say, hey, we got a yard. And so they began putting down plots, and they began providing water. And the community brought in seeds, and then they began their community gardening projects. And at harvest time, they said, we have more than we know what to do with. And so they began talking about local sourcing of food, community food pantries, shelters. They began an engaged community that started around the idea of food. We see this happening over and over again. We see people coming into the library and saying, I'm really into music, but I don't have a place to compose. And so now they have podcasting centers where they can go in and they have keyboards and recording, and then they can go ahead and broadcast those and they can publish them online. We have libraries that are putting print on-demand services in so that authors within the community can write up their own books, their own documents, their own poetry, and submit it to the library, and anyone on demand can print them out. And not only that, but with Creative Commons, people can come in and create literary magazines pulling from all of these different ideas and put together their own compilations to remix and reshare. The idea is these are not consumers. These are not users. When you go into a grocery store, you have a limited set of rights. Your rights are to spend money. When you walk into a library, you should have an unlimited right to create and dream of the future. We don't want to block people off and assume all they want to do is consume and leave. We have to give them the opportunity and an open invitation and models and role models to show that this library is a platform for this community to create whole new ideas and whole new thoughts. So for example, think about, I want to talk about a project that was undergoing. Worked with a group called Polaris Corporation. They make integrated library systems, right? It's where you can find the books, which are inventory systems. But they created community profiles. And the idea is that the library can install their system, and then they can create community profiles of local companies, provincial services, government services, these kinds of things, individuals, pizza shops, whatever they wanted. And as they could, so what happens is you could go in, you search the catalog for pizza, not only get books on pizza, but here's the local pizza shop. Or you search for childcare, here's the local agency on childcare, here's the local childcare provider, etc. So these profiles could be entered into a collection because now it truly is a community collection. But then they went one step further. They said, how are we going to keep this information up to date? And we said, well, this is a shared platform. Why not have these community members keep their own profiles up to date? They have a bigger stake in keeping the information updated than we do. And so a lot of librarians went, oh, loss of control. And in a collection viewpoint where the librarians are in charge of maintaining the collection, this is anathema. But in a community viewpoint, it makes perfect sense. So the community began entering their own information. Enter a doctoral student who was working on an iPad app, and he was going to take these iPads and he was going to install them in local buses. And what he wanted to do was that when you came to a stop or were coming to a stop, you'd go to the iPad and say, what's happening near me? And it would come up with a list of events, activities, places you could go. Where was that data going to come from? Well, it turns out the library has a repository of events and locations and people through this community profile. And so what happened was this app became a view of the library information, and that library information wasn't just the library's information, it was the entire community's information. Who owned that information about the pizza shop or the daycare center? It wasn't the library, it was being entered and owned by the community itself. Who owned the iPad app and designed it? It wasn't the library, it was the student and the busing and the buses. But would it have been possible without the library? No way. That library was necessary technology infrastructure. Now expand that. Would that community garden been able to be done without the library? No way. They needed the physical infrastructure and the physical space. Would that Civil War historian have been able to share his information? No way. They needed a place that was about learning and education and knowledge. This idea that the library somehow is a collection and a place run by librarians for librarians where people can come and consume, throw it away. The library is a platform for community innovation, community change.